my behalf, as well as my colleague and partner representing Philadelphia, Congressman Dwight Evans. Also have the support of another member of Congress who represents part of Philadelphia, Mary Kay Scanlon, who is fully supportive but cannot be here because the House Rules Committee is in session today, so she had to go early to D.C. Also want to thank the Philadelphia NAACP, who was supportive. Catherine Hicks, we heard 10 minutes ago, is only a few minutes away, so we're hoping she'll join us toward the end, as well as the Philadelphia Black Clergy, Reverend Weathers and Reverend Collier, and then with us here hosting us, the Reverend Dr. Darren McKinney, of Bright Hope Baptist Church, and you'll be hearing from several of them later. This is there we go, perfect timing. Come on in. We were just getting started, so come on in. Give you a few minutes, then come up when you're well. So we wanted to be here because this is a historic day, a crucial day. And for this historic day, we wanted to be in a historic place. Bright Hope Baptist Church, that is hosted, as you can see on the walls. Hello, welcome. Bright Hope Baptist Church, which, as you can see on the walls, has hosted Dr. King, Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, and so many others. Here in the city of Philadelphia, the birthplace of American democracy. Today, later this afternoon, the United States Senate will finally begin consideration of one of the most crucial pieces of legislation that Dwight and I have ever voted on, the reauthorization of the Freedom to Vote Act. Last week in the House of Representatives, we voted to pass what is now called the Freedom to Vote John Lewis Act. This bill now awaits action in the Senate, which it has been announced will begin later this afternoon. Now, as we know, we do have a majority support, 50 Democratic senators, plus the tie-breaking vote of the Vice President, in favor of the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act. Unfortunately, there are a couple Democratic senators who have been putting, and this is my characterization, a Senate procedure above passing the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act. That is wrong. The filibuster has been changed 161 times. I'll say that again. The filibuster has been changed 161 times. In fact, it was changed most recently just a few weeks ago so that we could pass an increase in the debt ceiling. I believe passing something as fundamental, indeed our most fundamental right, the freedom to vote, is more important than keeping the filibuster as is. Now, when we talk about the freedom to vote, for some people this might be kind of an abstract issue. There are numerous, so I'm going to make it more specific. There are numerous state legislatures, all Republican run, many of them in the Deep South, that have been passing new voter restrictions since last November. In Georgia, for example, their restrictive voting law passed just this past spring does the following. It removes the Secretary of State as the chair of the state's election board, instead allowing the Republican-dominated state legislature to handpick the chair of their own board, regardless of qualifications. That is frightening. Think of what happened just last election, 2020, when we had principled Republicans like Al Schmidt in our city, like Secretary Raffensperger in Georgia, actually, and these were proud Republicans who stood up to say we were going to go by the vote that was cast and certify the election. In Georgia, they have now removed the role of the Secretary of State. That should frighten all of us as we lead into 2024. But that's not the only new voting restriction they passed. Their bill allows the state elections board to suspend county elections officials if the board deems those officials unable to do their job. We know what the Republican-dominated legislature will do in that. They'll focus on Cobb County. The same way in Pennsylvania, if Republicans were able to pass that, they would focus on Philadelphia. It also does a number of other things, like puts severe restrictions on the number, locations, and hours of ballot drop boxes. It requires voter ID for both in-person and absentee voting. And probably most absurd of all, it bans volunteers from providing food or drink to people waiting in line to vote. We see this all throughout the country, but especially, frankly, in red states, where people are forced to wait 2, 3, 4 hours waiting in line to cast their fundamental constitutional right to vote. And now we can't even get them water or food to help them wait in line. And let's not forget, and this is especially important given where we're standing, one proposal that didn't make it into the final Georgia law but was proposed, and has been proposed elsewhere, was pushed by many Republicans to severely restrict or end early voting on Sundays. That would severely restrict, even end, the effort that is called Souls to the Polls. The African American community has been at the center of the fundamental fight for our right to vote. So going after souls to the polls is especially pernicious. So I want to repeat what I started out with. This is the moment for American democracy. We're here in Philadelphia, where it all began in 1776. And later today, the Senate will decide whether or not our democracy will continue, or whether these incredibly restrictive, onerous voting restrictions that are being put in place will continue. This is a threat to American democracy like we haven't seen. It started with the big lie, and it has continued in a straight line with what these state legislatures are doing. That is why we need the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act. I urge the Senate, especially my two Democratic colleagues, Senators Sinema and Manchin, to put the fundamental right to vote ahead of a Senate procedure. Please, before it is too late, let us pass the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act. My Senate colleagues, please do the right thing. And with that, I am honored to introduce, frankly, the best partner any member of Congress has, my friend, Congressman Dwight Evans.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. I also want to thank the NAACP, and I want to thank the black clergy, because with that combination that Brendan and I both together, we couldn't have a better combination. You know, after the day of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, it's very appropriate that we stand here in bright hope for what bright hope has meant to this city, to this state, and to this nation. And I'm honored to be with Brendan to have this discussion. Though Brendan called out, and I totally agree with his comments relating to the two United States senators, there's also a Republican senator here in Pennsylvania, and he is still the senator of the state, Pat Toomey. Pat Toomey is just as much responsible in terms of an act that he should take. He did the right thing by voting for impeachment of Donald Trump. He needs to take another step and vote for the right to people to vote. It's very clear, as Brendan has just described, that this issue and this challenge that we face is probably more fundamental. It is what Dr. King fought for and stressed about the importance of voting. One person that Brendan and I served together with was Congressman Lewis. And and Congressman Lewis would have said to us, if you see something wrong, do something. That's exactly what we, along with the NAACP, the black clergy, collectively are adding our voice to raise the consciousness of this challenge. There are people throughout our congressional districts who want to know where we stand. Well, the President of the United States, when he spoke down in Georgia, he talked about making a choice. And what side are you on? It's clear Brendan and I, along with the NAACP and the black clergy, have made our choice. And that is for the right of people voting. As Brendan just laid out, the fact of the matter is, anybody who's trying to impair the right for people to participate is wrong. So we come here because we couldn't be in a more higher sense than the challenge of the right to vote. It is something that we know that's what makes a democracy works, that people know for themselves that they're going to have this right and that they're not going to be unprepared. We're fortunate to have Governor Wolf, who has stood up to trying to turn Pennsylvania into Texas or to Florida. It is something that we both recognize that this is not acceptable. So I want to add my voice, along with the rest today, that we need the Senate to vote it now. We need to be very clear this is non-negotiable. What I want to do is turn it over to Pastor and have the pastor come.
Good morning. Welcome to Bright Hope Baptist Church, this sacred hollow ground, to deal and discuss with this sacred ideal of voting. Crucial legislation that, if mishandled, will change the laborious work accomplished that afforded brown and black bodies the opportunity and ability to articulate their voices in these yet to be United States of America. If handled improperly, their actions will reduce and so often remove our voices altogether. To quote my beloved fraternity, a voteless people is a hopeless people. Consequently, we must amend the Senate's rules so that no minority can deprive millions of Americans of their fundamental right to vote. Surely, if we can change the filibuster to increase an important issue, the debt ceiling, an exception must be made for voting rights. The foundation of our democracy is on the brink of being shattered. As numerous of voter suppression laws are being drafted and have become law in various states, we must remove the chains that limits the ballot box. We cannot quote Martin King and enjoy the amenities that come with his name when you are derelict in your duty to ensure equality and justice for all. We must continue to hold those accountable who are in power that stands in the way of justice regardless of their party lines. If we do not, the disease of division that Senator Sinema speaks of will continue to infest the soul of our nation. The dark cloud of injustice continues to loom over us. It is by far time for us to allow the sun of equity to brighten up our world. We're waiting today in bated breath as history documents the outcome of today. It is our prayer that God, in the words of J. Alfred Smith, will grant steel for their spines, so that when generations after us read and digest this moment, they witness how Toomey, Manchin, Sinema, and other Republicans did what was ethical, moral, and just. It is my hope that history documents and records this moment that the ballot box was made available for all. Thank you to Congressman Boyle and Evans for allowing us to have this sacred time, and even to our colleagues of the black clergy and to our state rep and leader of the NAACP.
Good morning, and thank you for being here, and thank you, Congressman Boyle and Congressman Evans, the black clergy, for allowing me, the NAACP president of the Philadelphia branch, to speak. I'm disappointed, actually, that we have to be here in the 11th hour still talking about hoping that they will do the right thing and vote to allow everyone their fundamental right to vote. At this point, we have been talking about it. We have had many press conferences, and we're still getting the excuses that are trying to stop us from being able to do what we should as people be allowed to do. It is everyone's fundamental right to be able to vote. And with this bill, if it is not passed, it does not give everyone that opportunity. Everything changes. So the excuse of the filibuster is just that, an excuse. We have heard time and time again that the black vote made a difference. Now, all of a sudden, this is where we are, an excuse to stop the black vote. So we're here, and I'm here speaking as a representative branch of the Philadelphia NAACP, and I join my colleagues. I'm going to be brief because I echo all that they said and all that we have been saying over the past year about this bill. We want them to do the right thing. We have to hold them accountable, because if they don't, and we allow them to stay in their seats and continue this, we'll never have change that we should have. Everything in life changes. And this is a pivotal moment where if the wrong decision is made, it will affect the future of our voting rights. So I implore those today to make the right decision. We have been here, we have talked about it, we have begged and pleaded that they look at this bill again, and now we're holding them accountable. So let's all look at what they see, look at what they do, and not forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and I thank all of the NAACP, thank the Philadelphia Black Clergy, and of course, my colleague and partner, Congressman Dwight Evans, and finally, for having us here at Bright Hope Baptist Church. Today really is the day, and this is it. And in this place of worship, you have to have hope being in a house of God, and we have here truly hope, but also stressing the fierce urgency of now. So thank you. If there are any questions, happy to take them. Oh, sure. Do it first.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, not being able to vote in advance, of course, is going to hurt a lot of our black and brown people. We have a lot of seniors who are a part of the church community, and it gives them that opportunity to vote and not have to come out and stand in the long lines. To be prevented to do that would be a large amount of votes that we may be missing. So that's a major concern. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is the classic states' rights argument. The argument that was made, frankly, by segregationists in the 1950s and the 1960s against the original Voting Rights Act was exactly that states' rights argument. It is one that I fundamentally reject. We have certain rights as American citizens that are protected by the United States Constitution. I believe President Kennedy was right and Attorney General Kennedy was right when they sent the National Guard into Alabama to enforce desegregation, to ensure that those federal laws on voting would be carried out. So I fundamentally reject the classic states' rights argument when it comes to this. There is absolutely a role for the federal government here.
And that Dr. King, who led with our late colleague about the need of protecting people's right to vote. Nothing is more essential in a democracy for people having access to the polls and not to in any way deter them. With yesterday being Dr. King's birthday, what better example could we have that a person led all of us to make it a more inclusive society? So where we stand today, maybe blacks, maybe Latinos, maybe LGBTQ, the fact of the matter is if you want to prevent someone from having access to the polls, that is wrong. So as Brendan talked about the aspect of the Constitution and protecting people's rights, we who are in the federal government need to send a statement that this is unacceptable. I also want to say something that Catherine said about the filibuster and the exceptions. So far, there's been 163 exceptions. 163. We just did what?
Debt ceiling.
Debt ceiling. We just did debt ceiling. So it's clear that there's exceptions when you want to. And I don't believe that this is strictly a Democrat issue. United States Senator Toomey needs to be called out on his participation. It is clear that he knows and understands the Constitution and people having a right. I don't think he should be left off the hook. I think he needs to be called out, and I'm calling him out today.
You want more? All right, go ahead. Sure. We do numerically have the votes to do that if everyone is willing. Yeah. 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 So a couple things. First, I believe, part of why we're having this event today, this really is it. This week and specifically beginning today, which is why we wanted to call on the Senate, call out two of our Democratic colleagues, our home state Republican senator who hasn't been supportive on this, to urge them. But I also, again, I have hope. I don't accept the premise that somehow this is guaranteed to fail, that we should have no hope. I've been in the same room when Senator Manchin of West Virginia has talked about changes to the filibuster that he would support, preserving the filibuster, but reforming it in such a way that it would enable eventually the Voting Rights Act, the Freedom to Vote Act, to come up. Whether it's talking about restoring it to what it was, a talking filibuster, and then once the person has exhausted himself or herself, there is a vote. Whether it's flipping the burden in terms of forcing the obstructionist side to constantly put up 41 votes in order to keep the debate going. There are a number of reforms that have been proposed that Joe Manchin has signaled that he's supportive of. So I do believe that we can get this done. We wouldn't be here exerting this effort if we thought this was a lost cause. It simply isn't. I would also point out that both Dwight and I, as members of the House Ways and Means Committee, spent 4 consecutive days, 41 hours, in very long Ways and Means committee meetings, what's called markup, voting the historic child tax credit and passing the Build Back Better Act. And we passed it out of the House. That is still sitting there in front of the Senate as well. So at least for us on the House side, we have been able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We passed the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act, and we passed the Build Back Better Act, which includes the child tax credit. And by the way, on the child tax credit, I'm proud to say, no district in Pennsylvania, and Dwight's is probably second in this, I know my district benefited more from the child tax credit more than any other in the state. That's the working poor and middle class of this state, of our Commonwealth, who really have benefited from the child tax credit. We do need to reauthorize that, but this is not a case of we can only have one or the other. We can't have both.
And the working poor, as Brendan just described, wants the right to vote.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody should be left off the hook. That's why I said to you, Senator Toomey, as long as he is in the United States Senate, needs to be held accountable. And it's clear that he, though we talk about Manchin from West Virginia, Senator from Arizona, we need to talk about Pennsylvania. Toomey has a responsibility to be accountable, and he needs to stand up and do the right thing.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.